Right, it's recording.
All right, so welcome to, I guess this is the second recording of the Saturday Dialogos. Yeah, I think this is the smallest group we've had maybe in a year. Well, maybe the second smallest group anyway. But yeah, we can do two pairs of authentic relating, and we'll do that for 10 minutes. Hey guys. All right, so I guess we start with questions. Oh, Gordon, you're new. I hope you weren't in the dark there for too long.
Yeah, I find ways to entertain myself. It's better in the dark, in fact.
Okay, nice.
All right. Put that up there. I moved the Zoom window around on the screen, and I'm expecting its view of myself and everybody else to change when I move it. It's just weird.
Expected.
Did you find a co-host for tonight yet, Josh?
Sort of in the background. Jen said if nobody else offers, then
yeah,
I'll do it.
I was going to say exactly the same thing to you. If no one else offers, I'll be there anyway. So I'm happy to help you out if necessary.
Cool. Yeah, I can.
Josh, when is that Pacific time? Is it 1 o'clock or noon or?
It's based in it's based in like Canada, United States time, so I don't think it changes with UK time. It should still be at 1.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 our time.
1 Eastern time you're talking about? No, you're talking about 1 Pacific time. 1 Pacific time. Yeah. Which means it's an hour earlier for me tonight, right? An hour earlier than usual for me tonight, and that makes sense. Yeah, that's right. That's what it should be. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, shall we start with questions?
So sorry, just on the UTC thing, Logan, because I know you're a UTC fan. You said in the Discord chat. Why? I don't understand. What's wrong with GMT? GMT and UTC are exactly the same, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but they're exactly the same.
They're exactly
Why
the
do we
same.
need UTC when we have GMT as a reference point? I don't understand. Unless everyone is going to adopt UTC and actually that is the time in their country, but that's not the case. It's just a reference point, right? A reference point that doesn't change, but GMT already does that. So I don't understand what the point of it is, to be honest.
Well, one's British, the other one's universal, so they're trying to strip us of our honor.
Yeah.
Attack.
No, but my point is that it's not actually adopted as universal time. If it was, then fair enough, but it isn't. It is just a global reference time for people to do conversions against because it doesn't fluctuate with daylight savings. But GMT doesn't fluctuate with daylight savings either. GMT is GMT.
Right. So in my mind, they're tied, and then UTC wins by 1% because it's not named after a weird place nobody cares
Right.
about.
Okay. All right.
So
Fair enough. Fair enough. If that's what it is, then fair enough.
It's universals in the name, Okay, they better marketing. I'm happy to support the project with better marketing.
Fair enough. It's not an imperialist name. Yeah. I get you.
Yeah.
Plus it pisses off all the folks in that little island over there.
Right, and that's really important to me.
Yeah, it's not the universal thing that pisses me off. It's just like it's duplicating something that's already there. That's it just seems unnecessary. That's all. I mean, the problem is if we were to adopt global time, it would end up being Greenwich that was noon at noon, right? If you know what I mean, like 12 o'clock at when the sun is directly overhead would be at Greenwich because all the maps start at 0 degrees at Greenwich. Do you know what I mean? And so it would almost certainly end up that way, and everyone else in the world would be resentful of that fact. And so, yeah, I think we're kind of stuck with it.
So you know that the country of China has 1 time zone, right? Even though they span more. As much or more latitude than the United States, and they got more people than just about anybody else. India, I guess, is
so within a country, right? Makes
is doing better, but I think we might all be speaking Mandarin by the time we have a universal time zone. Our host is wanting us to like get with the program here.
Let's get with the questions program.
Does it matter which country and which group of people end up unifying the world?
Unifying or controlling?
Mm.
Is there a difference?
Mm.
What is the difference between unifying and controlling?
Unifying or homogenifying?
Can unification come from one place? Is it unification if it comes from one place?
Is the difference that whatever party does that actually respects the right of different parties to exist?
What does unification look like?
Can we envision a path to a unification that is truly a unification of multiple, kind of a dialectic synthesis, right? Alternatively, as human beings, are we always just going to have one side that wins and one side and other sides that lose?
Does any unification last?
Can unification, like in any grand sense, actually exist? Surely, well, that was almost a statement couched as a question. I'll stop there.
Will the next universal language be a technological one rather than Mandarin?
Huh.
Will we need a universal language? Will there be a Babelfish app? Do any of you understand the Babelfish reference?
Yep. They swim in your brain, don't they?
Yeah, it was a bit naughty.
Yeah. Are human beings capable of unifying? Which is to say, are we capable of transcending our competitive instincts?
Sorry, go ahead, whoever that is, go ahead.
When I feel unified in myself, does that mean that all of my parts are aligned? Or, what's the makeup of let's say the transgression against those parts? Have I had to force some of those parts in line?
Yeah, that's really good. Is unified even the right word? Is integrated a better word than unified?
What does it feel like to be integrated?
To be integrated, are you speaking of being integrated within oneself, or one individual becoming integrated into a larger community?
Is there any distinction between these scales? Integration is integration. Sorry, that was a statement for sure. Jesus, that's it. I'm muting myself. I'm expelled from the rest of the game for cheating.
Is there a difference between integration and assimilation? Is one less even, maybe?
Why is it that when I think of being integrated versus being unified feels more magical somehow? Why is that?
It does.
Could it be because integration is familiar? Watching different colored dyes, mix together and change into another color, versus true unity. Where is that? I don't know.
Does true unity require a dictator?
Where do we find unity in nature?
does integration weaken your ability to act?
Maybe it's just acting with more discernment or not acting.
Isn't integration meaning that as different parts of you move, they don't move against the other parts in such a disharmonious way?
Yeah, what is this unity thing? I mean, do we mean united about all things, every person, all the time? Really?
Does unity imply a sense of connection or connection with something greater than ourselves?
Yeah, what does unity point at?
Is unity of a collection of humans, does it require homogeneity or other synchronization?
Is there an archetypical element to the word unity, perhaps a circle around a fire or something that immediately pulls up an image of something that's something very instinctive and central to, how do I make this a question?
So meta comment, this actually is feeling really interesting because it feels like we are, to me, and I'll make this official by saying, I wonder if this is a shared experience. My experience is that we're feeling into something, we're actually living in a question. The difference between unity and integration.
Yes.
And the way the way of living into this actually we can more easily do it by making proposals, making statements, making hypotheses that we're used to doing. And it feels like even though we're trying to play the question game, we've actually got an overarching question that we're feeling into.
Right. And yeah, I'll add to that and say you broke the rule first, so now I'm going to break it too. That's my justification.
My bad.
And say that I've felt more of a draw to make statements, state a connection, and then I would briefly try to put into it and then give up. And then I was wondering if it would come out in questions anyway. It ended up, it did, because Magnus, I was going to say unity seems to imply a goal or a greater something, and then right after that, Magnus,
Yes.
which was interesting or he said something quite similar to that.
But then unity would be temporary, right? Because once that goal is complete, then the unity dissolves, right? So you're
Totally.
proposing unity as a temporary heuristic to accomplish a particular thing.
Right.
Yeah, Gordon, I think we're done with questions.
I think Adam was really onto something with bringing up the fact that, also referencing back to something you had said, Logan, that this concept of unity has a sense, a harmony, an emotional pull, right? I'm feeling it. I think both of you guys articulated it, so I think I'm not alone in that. This emotional pull of unity, which is, number one, I think points to a difference between unity versus integration, right? I feel like I experience a desire for a unity of consciousness in a sense, like, non-ordinary states of consciousness, falling asleep, dissolving into a sense of absolute safety in the universe and absolute being, whether that's, going back to the womb or, my mother's breast, or something like that, or just the warm, the warm oceanic feeling that Freud described, or maybe a heroin experience, a post-orgasmic bliss experience. That feels like unity has those connotations to me, and integration has a different set, as like being a person as part of a whole system, being a cog in the machine at the worst end, being an instrument in a band, which is different than like unity is all the atoms are it's like the atoms in a crystal, and it's where everything is lined up perfectly, whereas integration allows for different orientations, different perspectives.
Yeah, and also I think implied in what you were saying there, and is integration seems to be a more mechanical. It has a mechanical feel to it. If I'm integrated with my parts, it means I've kind of reached in and rearranged them and kind of made them play nice. And if I'm integrated in a society, it means that maybe I go to work and I help my coworkers, and I'm sort of almost mechanically working in the system. Whereas, unity seems something more miraculous.
I know Magnus wants to go, but sorry.
No, I'm done now.
Some Magnus and then Eric and then Adam.
Yeah, I was just gonna maybe say or add, like from a sort of personal perspective, integration feels more psychological, and maybe there's this different parts that we have within ourselves, and it's bringing some sort of, like Adam, you were saying, so we're not like fighting each other, the left hand, the right hand are not going opposite directions. There's that sort of, and it feels very like practical and a sort of rising sort of awareness or consciousness and just being more integrated is a very healthy place to be. Whereas unity seems to me more like some sort of higher spiritual place and experience and something to move towards. And the two are both sort of part of the same journey, really. Yeah.
I was actually going to say something very similar. It follows on very nicely from what you've just said, Magnus, that it feels to me like unity it lacks pragmatism, right? There's an experience of unity to be had, right? And we should all be grounded in that and informed by that. But integration is, how do you actually translate that unity into action in the real world that does not create conflict, right? That is win-win-win, right? This is, integration is artful. It's not just mechanical, it's artful. It's the whole thing. It's the dance of actually living in the world, right? Unity is all very well, and as I say, the experience of that oneness with all things is essential to be a fully integrated individual and to be able to integrate with others in effective action in the world, right? But I actually see integration. But we need to drill down into what we actually mean, I think, by this word unity a little bit, because it's perhaps this is just a semantic thing, right? That one person's integration is another person's unity, sort of thing. I think there is a certain overlap between the words in people's minds, and there's maybe some value to be had in drilling down into that. But yeah, that's basically what I wanted to say. That integration is not this dry mechanical thing. It's the whole thing of bringing that sense of unity with all things into action in the world.
Maybe if I jump in, with integration, with that word, I kind of inherit some assumptions like about the world. Seeing the world as a system, seeing it materialistically, also seeing reductions. So reductionistically, like I am a part that is not a part of the whole. Whereas when I think of unity, I recognize that I am one part, but I am also the whole. So there's an inherent set of like assumptions that I make about myself and my part that I play from how I frame it with those words. And I think that actually integrated, it's almost like it's second order, and then first order is unity. Like they feed into the same thing. Unity is, as I see it, it's a synchronization of both aspects, whereas integration seems very much left systems, language, analysis point of view of the world.
Yeah, I'll reflect or summarize part of that, which is to say that integration seems to start from a place of disconnection and separation as a starting place. Okay, then how do we fix it or connect those parts?
what it came to mind to like make unity sort of the same grammatical shape as or form as integration, so make it unification. Unification, like the image that comes to mind is like going in a common direction. We're unified and we have a directionality to that unification. Integration can be completely directionless. It's, and in fact, when you put two pigments together, whatever, that's basically what happens. It's everything just kind of randomly sorts itself out into completely, balanced. So yeah, there's definitely an interesting relationship there. Unity is more aspirational. It's something to kind of, it drives the unification, right? There's like a vision or something, so we can unify around that. But in order to, enact it, as Eric was saying, we need to integrate because we are differentiated agents, within social groups and organizations. So if we have a unifying vision, we still need to work out the sort of messy like integration bits.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a connection when we talk about unification implying or requiring this directionality, and then there's this idea of unification feeling more magical or more awe-inspiring. It makes me think of worship and the idea of God. So when we're in worship, we're putting something else above us and we're in reverence to it. And so maybe that same, the fact that unification and unity implies a directionality, maybe that's quite related to the idea that the feeling or the why we want it, why it seems so desirable to us and magical.
It seems like unity is.
Gordon did have his hand up.
I'm sorry.
Susan, you haven't spoken in a while, so I'll yield to you and come back after.
Oh, okay. It seems like unity implies peace, PEACE, because I don't know, that's just how I associate it. If there's unity, then there's no aggression or there's no disunity. So yeah, so it would imply a peaceful existence of some sort. I'm sorry, go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, I am getting a fear reaction to unity. Fear is not maybe not exactly right, but so the picture, especially as I'm hearing us talk about it in a religious sense, or also the addictive sense, the addictive attractor of unity. The picture I'm having of unity versus integrity is again that crystalline structure, that everything resonating on the same page, no variation, no individuality in a state of unity. It's a black hole, right? Everything's collapsed down, and it's such that there's the lack of differentiation, essentially, which scares the shit out of me. And so I'm feeling right now this notion of integration as being a lot harder and therefore less attractive in a certain sense, right? It's not the path of least resistance as a conscious organism, and yet it's the path of wholeness. As rather in contrast, path of unity does not feel like the path of wholeness. And I also, I'll stop there. That's one complete thought.
Sorry, you go ahead, actually, Eric. I'm lost my thought.
Well, I have a feeling the same thing might have happened to me, but I just wanted to go back to what Gordon was saying earlier on about that maybe what I'm trying to get at, I'm not sure I can put this very well, but that integration sort of happens in the direction of unity, right? There's, because Gordon said earlier on, right, that integration implies that things were apart from each other and needed to be stuck together into something, right? And the thing you stick them together into is a new unity, right? And so the process of integration is, I guess, refining a unity of some kind, something like that, right? For forever improving, refining, or driving towards more complete unity, something like that. But there's a relationship between them, right? The integration is the doing, the unity is the being, maybe something like that, the being and doing of this thing.
I do like that, and I want to respond to Gordon, your fear reaction. I really resonate with that. To sort of describe what I think you're saying another way is that unity could imply totalitarianism. If I'm part of a unity and I don't want to be anymore, that might not really be an option for me, you know. Whereas if I'm part of an integration, the implication, I suppose, is that I, in my full freedom and individuality and uniqueness, can kind of pursue my purpose. But because I'm integrated, that's not predefined for me. It's that I'm in a system that kind of is structured in a way where that still pumps the pistons of a good engine in some way.
Yeah.
So I think that there's an interesting thing to play with between unity and unify. Unity can be like the single point thing, you know, like a black hole or whatever, like a almost, you know, like an asymptote. Whereas unify is bringing disparate parts together for a common whatever. And so as individuals, if we feel like there's something worth unifying around, then we integrate in order to, yeah, become like in line or you know, on the same path with that unifying concept. But it can never, it's not like we're driving towards some 0 point, you know, some unity point. It's more like I don't know, something to point to that we can all say, yeah, we agree that that's worth moving toward. And yeah, so again, you know, working out the integration aspects and the things that we need to do to like cooperate and actually, enact it.
I feel like integration is like it's a development stage, and then unity is like a higher development stage. And to make sure that like something isn't sacrificed, like the aim is to have an individuated individual as well as an individuated society. How do you, and I think also in the expansion of consciousness, you have to think, well, at what scale, what number of people can you actually, is actually a supportive environment to create like individuated individuals and that individuated society, because you can't have it like, there's got to be like smaller pockets, many smaller pockets, and they've got to have their local, because whenever you have it too large, just what the default, what is currently there will withstand. But when there's a smaller pocket, something else can be held within that space, something different. So that, I don't know if I'm introducing anything into this, but that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm certainly, yeah, just to echo what you're saying, and I like that differentiation between, it's almost like I think the integration or the individuation is a stage that's necessary to occur before unity, the path of unity is starting to go down. Otherwise, it just like, I share your fear, Gordon, it becomes some sort of spiritual bypassing, some cult-like thing. We will take 5-MeO DMT on the weekends and experience unity, but you know, our life goes to shit, or somebody will get addicted to drugs. It's just, it's almost like it's yeah, there's a sequence to this. There's a sort of, you know, stages, and that's the key to not going off the rails, I think.
It sounds like part of what we're saying is integration is the work. It's harder to imagine how unification or unity would be the work. There's no obvious work there. It's more of shining something that we want in some way. Yeah, go ahead, Susan, and then I have and then Gordon as well, if you'd like, and then I just want to talk about structure.
Okay, yeah. So I can't help it. All while you guys have been talking about this, I keep thinking about FEMA and, you know, the incident command system. And so unity of command and unified command, that those are two different things. Unity of command means that there is one commander and we all fall in underneath him. So it's a dictatorship. Unified command is when FEMA comes in to help the state and local governments. And so we integrate. So that's all about integration, where it's more difficult because in the unified command system, it means that somebody has to defer authority to the most qualified person. So then you get into, well, how are we going to decide who the most qualified person is here? And so that's an issue. So I just had to bring that up because it's just pushing these buttons from my work talking about this, because they talk about it a lot in FEMA. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share.
That's actually really interesting. I'm glad to know that this is tying in, you know, I've heard you speak about these kinds of concepts of, you know, having a single commander and single point of command and related elements. And so to recognize that that's tied in completely into your professional life was a piece that I hadn't put together before and was really helpful to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
So one immediate response. And I just wanted to say, I'm really liking the recognition. I think, Logan, you brought it up, that like unity is a state, right? Unity is the piece that I'm getting. There's no avoiding the unity of the universe, right? There's no avoiding the fact that we are somehow interconnected, and you know, the atoms, these atoms in this meat suit were formed in a supernova in, you know, someplace else, and you know, all of this stuff, that it's all this interdependency. And yet what we do as individuals always is integration, is working with the separate parts and pieces. And that, God, the way the words that are coming to me right now is something about, you know, unity and unification is the realm of God, so to speak, of something much, much larger than human beings. And when humans talk about unifying things or creating a unity, you should run the other way. When humans talk about working on doing integration work, you're probably in a healthy spot.
Right, and I'll also add just real quick that I don't really have much of an interest in unifying collectives of people, but when I want to unify myself, that seems like a much more graspable and important concept. And that relates then to the idea of sometimes sometimes it feels like the relationship I have to my sub-personalities, my sub-parts, is almost that of a god to mortals in a zoomed in sense. And so that's just an interesting kind of parallel there. So just on structure, this felt nice to do what we've done so far, and I'm just lost as to what to do now. I guess we could take an optional break now. It's almost on the hour. And then we could come back and, I mean, 7 people. Do you guys, it's almost like I feel more of a need to break up the time for variety more than I feel a need to do the breakout rooms specifically. So I don't know if that sparks any thoughts in you guys.
Well, I've just thought of a word that was missing from this entire conversation and really should have been a part of it, I think, namely synergy, right? I mean, that's a whole, you know, that is why things are brought into relationship and integrated with each other, so that new synergies may be realized, new levels of complexity. But it's not, because to unify means to make one, right? And that's not the thing. Making things one is not the thing. Having myriad diverse things brought into synergistic relationship to make something new and cooler, that's the game, right? So there's something, I share Gordon's, there's something about unity which fails to acknowledge the actual fucking point of existence and creation and evolution in the whole universe. You know what I mean? There's something, and so yeah, that oneness with all things is true, but it's kind of not meaningless, but it's hard to, it's sort of practically irrelevant, if that makes any sense. Yeah, Gordon. So I'm getting tangled. So go ahead.
Number one, Logan, you're going to have to just take the bull by the horns and either let us go or do something. Number two, yeah, what Eric said. There was something in there was resonating really strong as truth, and I don't remember exactly what it was. So.
Yeah, I put it in the chat. I'll have to step away, maybe return, but I'll be having my nephews come over. But just a thought, breakouts might be interesting because they could go in slightly different directions and then come back and see what happened instead of just keeping everybody in one group.
Yeah, that's true.
To be honest, what feels alive for me today is keeping this group conversation going as it is. That 6 or 7 people is a little big, but it's a good number. And 3, 4 is I don't know. I don't want to lose access to all of the minds that are here. That's kind of what I'm feeling at the moment.
Another thought was just like if variety is desired, maybe switch up the format a little bit. Maybe a round or two of glass bead game or something instead of kind of popcorn.
Agnes, you had something to say?
A loo break would be much appreciated.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I could kill another cup of tea as well. So should we take like 3 to 5 minutes kind of thing, something
Cool.
like that?
Yeah.
Is that all right?
Perfect timing.
2 minutes.
And I'd love to pick up on the synergy as well. Cool. I don't know if it was obvious before, but what you're suggesting is that we stay unified, Gordon.
Unified or integrated?
Something. Unified somehow seems to fit better here, though.
Yeah. Yeah, keeping the group unity.
Mm-hmm.
In our keeping our integrity. I mean, the integrity of this process is not disrupted by breaking us apart,
right,
into a multiplicity.
Right. And much more arguably, the unity is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unity is more fragile.
Yeah, I think that's key and connects a lot to a few of the things we've said before. Yeah.
Yeah, which is why we need to be afraid of it, because it requires enforcement.
Yeah. And why we can't depend on it as well.
Yeah.
The advice wouldn't be to surround yourself with people who are unified, necessarily be to surround yourself with people who are integrated. Because even just that makes them already seem more kind of balanced or stable somehow.
Yeah, yeah.
Someone who's been captured into a cult might be quite unified in a sense, right? They have their direction, and there's no doubt. Mm-hmm. But integrated is maybe a harder sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That I'm coming around to that same view. Like, I guess there's both sides, because like when there's a unifying whatever, whether it's an ideology or a cult or whatever, people gather around it. There's something attractive about it. This is the direction. But I guess it is by just its nature. It's single, like it doesn't allow for information from outside of that vision. So that's why the enforcement's needed, like in Soviet Russia or communist China or whatever. So yeah, that's interesting. I think, yeah. So I was first talking about like the positive side, which is like the visionary, the thing that people get behind, but taken to its logical conclusion, if you don't like adapt it, integrate it with other perspectives, then it just, in order to enact it, it actually becomes a totalitarian kind of situation.
Well, and that lines up, as far as I can see, quite well, because when you are hyper-focused, in fact, I know somebody who's very hyper-focused on a particular project, and when you're hyper-focused, that means that you're blind to everything outside of it. You have tunnel vision. This friend I know, he's so hyper-focused to the point where I think he actually misses the shortcuts to actually get to his goal, because he's not looking 2 degrees to the right where he might avoid a thicket if he goes, but he's just, he's like this, and so. That makes sense what you say, Josh.
Just to add one more small thing to that, it seems like this idea of unifying happens around a particular goal, right? It doesn't mean these people are unified. It means that for this particular thing on this particular day, we are deciding to agree on this one thing and unify around it. But but that's all it is. It's very interesting, isn't it, that we started from unity as being like this grand cosmic experience of existence kind of thing, and have now got down to all it is rallying around a cause. It's temporary and then it goes away and you get interested in something else.
Yeah, I want to say I always had this funny, this mistrust of unity. It's taken me a little while to articulate it, but that's yeah, I'm leading the crusade against it.
We will be unified under you in this crusade.
Whatever. What I wanted to say, Eric, was I think synergy and integration are actually, to me, a lot of overlap in those Venn diagrams, and in fact that unity is the opposite of synergy in a very real sense. And does not take advantage of the possibilities of synergy.
Magnus?
I was going to say, like, trying to think of maybe squaring the circle here, and some of like the really ancient cultures, like let's say the ancient Greeks, with all the strong kind of archetypal imagery of gods with different types of personality and characteristics. And there's something nice about this, a very kind of like varied archetypal religion, for want of a better word, in that but within that there is this sort of context of unity within that kind of multiplicity somehow, and that's a way that human beings can be unified with a shared culture, but also do the work of integration, and it's kind of everything is somehow tied together, so you're not losing. You haven't got that sense of less than from unity. It's not like the Borg where you're being assimilated. So yeah, that was all.
I would just like to throw another word in that came from when Eric, you brought in synergy. I would like to bring in emergence as well. And it occurs to me that unity won't allow for, synergy doesn't exist, and it wouldn't allow for emergence. It seems, and it's again, it's related to, I think, what you were saying, Josh, and how I responded about this focused vision. If you have unity on a particular topic, in fact, I wanted to say earlier, I think in response to what Gordon was saying, we are unified in meeting here today. That's, I think, almost 100% true. And so maybe unity gets a lot more utility when you give it we're unified under what? And maybe that gives it more utility when you fill that blank space in. But if you are, again, hyper focused on something, and there is a flow to that, certainly, and a joy, and maybe you get what you want, but that wouldn't be emergence. That would be achievement, which is fine. Nothing wrong with achievement. But emergence is also beautiful, and so it would certainly be a shame to Well, it would certainly be a shame to live your whole life in unity, I guess, because then you would have no emergence. I guess that's sort of what's implied. And I'll stop there.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine many of you have seen it, but Daniel gives a great talk sitting around a campfire about the notion of emergence. And the basic story is that attraction creates relationship, relationship creates synergy, synergy creates emergence, emergence creates new forms to be attracted to each other to start the cycle again, right? And it just struck me that there's kind of a grand unity in all of this. There's a sort of process of unfolding, right? Which is the grand unity in which all of this stuff is encased. There's an evolution, unfolding, whatever you want to call it, complexification, whatever the fuck you want to call it. But that seems to be maybe a unifying principle beyond something like that, anyway.
Yeah. An expression of that ineffable unity that, you know, we're one universe. And it just seems so obvious and yet so difficult to put into words. So, over to you, Susan.
Yeah, we haven't used the word ego yet, but it would seem to me that if we didn't have an ego, it would be so obvious that we were all unified, always have been, always will be. We couldn't exist for a second without the unity of nature, with everything the way it is. We couldn't. So we are apparently non-unified. We're only apparently separate, but isn't that an illusion? I mean, aren't we really unified? And it isn't just the cognitive side of us? I don't know. Go ahead.
If I could just respond to that real quick, I would say yes, but it's maybe a useful illusion. The only resistance I have to your suggestion is to say that it's something to be gotten rid of. It's like, money is an illusion in a similar way, or maybe even language, you could argue, for that matter. But it's quite useful.
But what I'd like to say is that, ego, I mean, that's how we have fun in life with ego. I would think that everything meaningful at a cognitive level comes because we have an ego. So integration would have to be high on the list of achievements for egos. And so I really don't, I agree with you that the ego is a useful illusion. I wouldn't say the ego is an illusion, like maybe Eckhart Tolle or somebody would say. I think the ego is something real. I experience it as real. And I know on some kind of psychedelics, I have watched it dissolve and stuff, but I don't really think the experience of being on psychedelics is really real. It's different, but I don't really see it as sustainable. So, I mean, does most people experience unity when they're, using hallucinogenic drugs? That is kind of what happens.
I think interesting you should bring that up, Susan. No, I just had like a kind of like a flash of insight when Gordon was saying before that, like, it's so hard to put into words. And then I just thought about like integration and unity, and I was like, is a really key part of our problem is that like we're trying to achieve integration and unity through the mode of thought and words rather than the mode of like actions and like intentions and us seeing it play out. Like, because we're separated geographically across space, we're not in a community, a tight-knit community where I can just see the actions of all things happening and they just unfold. Instead, we're at distance, we're not in proximity, and then we're using words, we're overthinking about. the abstractions of it rather than living it.
Right.
I had this really interesting experience a couple of days ago. Flash of insight, maybe. Getting ready for a relatively high pressure workday, reflecting on some of the behaviors, some of the interactions and behaviors I had observed with some of the people I'm working with. You know, and there's one person who is, you know, in many ways a model of success in this global corporate late stage capitalism culture that I'm embedded in my professional life. And I was reflecting with a certain amount of admiration at his skills in this space. He's leading some difficult conversations, some contentious conversations between 3 different global companies on, you know, putting together a, you know, pulling a business deal together, and, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars on the table. And he's able to keep track of multiple threads in the conversation, hold them clearly in his hand about 5 different things that you know need to get talked about and we need to get resolved, and these are where the open points are, and he's got them in his mind, and he's quite brilliant at it. And the frame of mind, the ability to do that, I understand how it works. I can do it in some realms to some degree, you know, and recognize what he's doing in this spot. And I also recognize my own ability to sense into things in a completely different way. And the way it struck me was that what Atindra was doing in this space is like having things perfectly sorted on a 2-dimensional plane, right? And everything fits together just so. And there's also the possibility to see the whole thing in 3 dimensions, and stuff moves around and floats, and there's a whole lot of other inputs, and it's really hard to keep those puzzle pieces together in exactly the same way. I lose track of the 5 things that have to get accomplished in the order and the sequencing and stuff. And simultaneously, I'm much more in touch with how I'm actually feeling about things, and it's the space that my values actually live in is not that 2-dimensional space where everything can be organized and sorted, right? And the quality of mind, quality of awareness, quality of thinking, of organizing myself, finding right relationship to my values, to my community, to the people in my life, finding any kind of right relationship happens in a different state of mind than the mind that can sort those puzzle pieces on the 2-dimensional plane and get the deal closed. And it feels to me like ego is much more the functioning on that 2-dimensional plane, and the rest of it, you know, it's critical and important, and yet limited as well. Like there's, you know, I can't, at least for functioning in this society, I need that kind of functioning that sorts, you know, that would know, even if I, you know, was living my grandfather's life or great-grandfather's life, where the 10 things it needed to do involved milking the cows, making sure that the ewe who was, you know, was about to give birth was still harvesting the hay and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's the 2-dimensional versus 3-dimensional ways of thinking, ways of experiencing the world is the central point that I wanted to communicate.
Yeah, and if I'd like to connect that to when you say the 2-dimensional plane, that seems to map, ironically, to the idea of a map. So we have a map of here's my map of the points that need to get closed on this deal. Here's my map of what my day should look like. But then reality differs from the map inevitably. In fact, I've heard it argued quite well that it has to be different, otherwise it's not a useful map. But part of the map's utility is that it's actually not quite reality. But anyway, and so what I think, to maybe reflect, part of what you're saying is that, and I'm curious how this connects to unity, so I'd like to hand that forward. But that two-dimensional negotiation of, I imagine it as chess pieces on that. Oh, well, you said puzzle pieces. You can focus on that, but you focus on that at the cost of a disconnection from reality, a distancing from reality, from what's happening around you. And I'll just add as well that this maps nicely to a left and right hemisphere type way of thinking. And the book, some of you I think have read The Master and His Emissary, he talks about these different halves, and he argues with the left brain, which is map focused and system and symbol focused, our society is so overbalanced in that direction. And what we need more of is the right hemispheric, or in your terms that you just used, Gordon, the more of a 3D world. That's what we need more of a connection with. So now I'm really curious about the connection of this to unity. I could ramble and guess, but I'll stop here.
I think Magnus had a reply, and then
keep it very short because I know Eric, you want to say something. I was just wondering, is it better to think of unity as almost like a pull or a direction rather than a destination or a noun? And that just helps clarify things. It's not something we human beings have the ability to stay in, or to actually, and even if we do get to a state of unity, I would almost, well, I would like to think that there's a more purified state of unity beyond that, and so on, and there's no end to it. So yeah, I kind of like that idea as sort of a magnetic attractor or something, and not and that we are in relationship to it.
I make very quickly, Eric, it's like you could say unity implies movement. You could almost say that. Or directionality anyway.
Directionality, yeah.
Yeah, because I still got to go back to the fact that we're obviously unified. There's no way that you could take me out of existence. Existence would, fall apart. I mean, every aspect of existence is required. Isn't that kind of a given? So we are in unity. It is a fact that it can't be disputed.
Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, like the universe is a single indivisible whole, and the notion of separate objects interacting with each other is an illusion, right? I mean, that's Einstein's thing. And yeah, absolutely. What I wanted to pick up on was what the thread Logan raised about the left brain, right brain thing. This is at the risk of sounding like a misogynist or a sexist or whatever. Anyway, I'm still going to say it. There's a show called Defending the Caveman that an Australian comic did. I saw quite a few years ago. And it was about the relationships between men and women in modern culture, and he started way back, in sort of prehistory. And he said, if you imagine when men and women were cavemen, men are bigger, faster, stronger, just by virtue of their biology, right? And so as a consequence of that, they would tend to take the role of the hunter. And because of that, because of the role of hunting that the men tended to adopt versus the role of the foraging and the cave tending or whatever that the women tended to adopt, men became very, very good at doing what was required for hunting, namely focusing on one thing to the exclusion of all else, right? Whereas women, the exact opposite, aware of everything that's around them, right? Not focusing too much on any one thing, being aware of it all at once. And this is, I think, very analogous to the left brain, right brain kind of modes of apprehending the world. And in terms of the unity, right, the unity is to be found in, because both of these modes of perception are useful, right? In the right context, both of these modes of perception are useful. And so the unity lies in the integration, right, between these modes to find a unified purpose, right, a unified direction forward. Even though, and so this unity that Susan was speaking to, this, right, this grand unity of the entire universe kind of thing, is celebrated in the dance between the opposites that occur within that unity, right? Something like that. Something like that.
That's nice. What you just said.
Just wanted to think like this sense of integration, because I think there's integration which is kind of allowing different, maybe personally certain tendencies to coexist, and sort of an integration. But then there's another word like transformation, which is some sort of some higher order level of emergence, from the conflict of these opposites, these different tendencies. And I don't know if I use the word integration to describe that higher order level of emergence. Certainly on a personal level, I think it feels more like some like transformation, and in the direction of unity.
Emergence can't happen without integration, right? It doesn't happen, I don't believe, from parts orienting, it doesn't happen in a random circumstance. It happens in systems that are integrated somehow, where there's the qualities of interaction. This is what Eric was quoting Daniel Schmachtenberger on, that the interaction creates a resonance, creates a field, creates, makes some energy circulation that becomes the proto emergence. There seems to be the varying levels of emergence that are possible in that sense, right? Just the acknowledgement that different things have come together in a way that they're having a relationship, that they're now integrated in a certain sense, that that there's a thing, and this is what I perhaps is ego, right? I'm picking up on multiple different threads here, and
Yeah.
But Susan, actually, maybe to a masculine thing, a laser focus on this, that you say ego is real, and a few minutes later you say that it's obvious that there's no separation, that we're all part of the one big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I have cognitive dissonance trying to hold those two statements as simultaneously true. I wonder if I'm the only one.
If I can just jump in here, you holding those two things in your, I like how you phrased it. To hold them introduces cognitive dissonance, and it makes me want to kind of take this framing and then put it on those things. Let's talk about unity and integration and all that stuff, or at least imply that framing. There's something fun about that.
Yeah.
What would it like an emergence too? What would emerge from differentiation, perhaps? Go ahead, Susan.
I've always had this theory that free will is a function of, it's very puny. There's a very puny amount of free will available, and it is dictated by the flexibility of every other free will. So it's got a certain flexibility, it can move, but it won't change the course of anything, really. that as kind of, and I feel sometimes when I'm just all wound up about something's not going right and it's not me, you know, and then I just stop and I realize, I just need to meditate and back off and let the world do what it wants to, and it'll all work out. And bang, it all works out. In fact, we can all look back at our past and say, oh, well, I guess it did all work out, you know. But so free will is that piece that makes us think that we're separate and that we have power and that we can make decisions and that somehow we have control over our life. But really, it's just this modulating thing going on that is integrated with every other thing. I've never heard this really voiced by anybody, but it has to be that way. So when you were talking about, you know, seeing the one side where we see parts and the other side where we see unity, you know, the left, right brain kind of thing. Yeah, they do coexist together. Understanding exactly how they interact together, I just feel like free will is just made into this ridiculous thing when it's just a tiny little movement that moves everything else, but it never goes very far. You know what I mean? It always, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but it doesn't really do a whole lot. We think it
like
does.
a tiny rudder on a giant ship, that sort of notion, right?
There you go. Yeah. And it may affect a small little section of reality, but only because that section of reality is moving anyway with the inputs of all the other free wills. That's the only way I can say it. I give up.
Well, I'll throw another idea in that seems related, which is that so when you look back in the past, and actually you use language like this too, Susan, you look back and you say, well, it kind of all worked out. And you can also, I think, reasonably say, certainly from a scientific point of view, it couldn't have happened any other way. You know, the physical laws sort of marched us inexorably to this point, and here's where we are. And so it's like, what do people really mean when they say, I could have done something else? But what does that mean? And yet it seems like as humans, we live in the present and the future's there and the past is back there. And we somehow still need to do the work that you could call free will. And it's like free will or something like it, or making choices, making decisions maybe, is still work that we have to do. And so in that sense, the different possible futures is a reality to me. It's a reality to me to think, what if I got on a plane and went to Somalia? What would that be like, you know? And then that actually somehow affects then what actually happens. And so, well, I'll stop there, but just the summary of the idea is that there's some work that we're doing that has to do with decisions and free will. And that work obviously affects what happens. And so that seems to imply free will is this instrumental thing. And yet you can also say, again, there's this dissonance, because then the contradiction is that, and yet you look back and say, well, physically speaking, biologically, chemically, you know, physically speaking, nothing else could have happened.
I've just posted a link to a little video called Why Is the Milk Gone? It's funny. It's only about 5 minutes long, something like that, by a guy called Exerbia on exactly this notion. Watch it at your leisure, but do watch it. It is funny. It's worth the watch.
Adam, what were you going to say?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. I wanted to jump on this idea about free will a little bit, because although like such a minor choice, so, and I'm getting this from like Atomic Habits, where like they say, like, I'm just going to read a quote here. So consider this: a commercial airliner leaving Los Angeles on the way to Honolulu takes off, and the pilot inadvertently sets the course off by 1 degree south. The compounded impact of just being 1 degree off course over the 2,479 mile, 5-hour plane trip would probably land the plane in Auckland. Okay, so you're aiming to go for Hawaii, and then you end up in New Zealand. Or put another way, making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse seems insignificant in the moment. But over the span of moments that make up a lifetime, these choices determine the difference between who you are and who you could be.
Oh, fuck, now I'm paralyzed by fear.
Something so small, so insignificant. If you can think greater than you feel in that moment, if you can decide to choose to live a slightly higher level, or each time you do that, like, you are setting yourself up on a completely different path. That tiny little rudder, it makes all the difference for you feeling empowered in life. So I think it's no small thing.
Yeah. You know, on the topic of free will, and I wonder if this is in the milk thing. I've pondered this for a while, and it's a place where Sam Harris pisses me off. One place where Sam Harris pisses me off. Normally, I love the guy, but I tried to. So I read his book on free will, and I've only read it once, but I didn't find a single thread of argument that started from axioms and first principles and progressed to the end and concluded something. I felt like he was pulling multiple pieces of support, sort of anecdotal pieces of support, but and every one of them was partially suggestive, but nowhere did it actually conclusively prove. And I'm not sure if that's my bias, because I'm definitely in the camp of with this. My standard is not can I believe it, it's do I have to believe it, on this notion that we don't have free will. So I'm a little skeptical of myself, but the thing that I'm worried about the most is his statement that modern brain science and neurological research is showing that like always, our brains have fired the neurons for us to act before we're conscious of taking the action. And what I think is actually happening there which I think has been shown by brain research more recently, is that in fact our brains are forecasting machines. And so they're naturally making these forecasts of how things could go, and then our free will comes into play to choose whether we want to do that or that one or that one or something. And so therefore the evidence that we thought of it before we became conscious of it, I don't take that as evidence. I don't think that's appropriate. I don't think Sam actually gets to use that piece of evidence to drive his conclusion. So that's my contribution at the moment. I'm complete.
Josh, you had something to say?
Yeah, so I've been I usually do the Sam Harris meditations, and just revisiting, like look for the looker, look for the thinker. Is there a thinker besides the thoughts? Like, all this internal investigation to, realize that there is no self in the middle of it. But I don't know. I think it's one of those things where you can kind of hold both in your mind, like that all those self-inquiries can maybe produce the same sort of insight, but still it feels like we have free will, and it's the most from an individual perspective, living as if we have free will is like the best way to go. So it in terms of how to live a life, and like what makes a good life, what sort of values we should try to embody, and that kind of thing, it's all the same answers. So I guess that's my thought on that.
What I want to say about Sam Harris, because I do his meditations all the time too. I really like this, but his bottom line is that you can't control the next thought you have. You think you can, but you can't. It is absolutely true that the next thought you have, whatever it is, you didn't cause it to come into being. It happened. You saw it. Oh, there's a thought. There's another one. And so that argument all by itself stands alone as, well, if I couldn't have thought my next thought without it just happening, like it happened and then I was aware that I had that thought, and you know what I mean? Then how can you have a free will if you can't even control your next thought? So that's a very compelling argument. Anyway, seems like Gordon wants to say something.
Eric has had his hand up for a little while.
Oh, sorry, Eric.
No, that's okay. I mean, I wasn't desperately urgent to get in. But yeah, no, but I think Susan had it kind of about right before when she was talking about, you know, it just being one tiny little element. But I don't think it's a binary thing that we do or don't have it. I think we have the ability to exercise free will more so in some situations than in others, right? Because our free will is but one agentic force at play in the world, right? There are all sorts of other mechanistic and agentic forces, you know, also at play in the world. And so the extent to which our free will, even if enacted, can actually impact on the world, right, is very, very debatable. And I think Susan's point about free will being very limited in context, right? Like you have no free will over what the next random thought is going to come into your head, right? For example, there are things like that, absolutely. But there are moments of choice to be made in life, right? And I think at those avenues, at those forks in the road, there is absolutely free will, and there is a conscious choice made to go one way or the other, you know, to take action or not take action, this kind of thing, you know. So it definitely, I think it definitely does exist at some level, but I think it's very flexible as to how much of it can be exerted in any given situation, kind of thing. There we go, something like that.
Could you say again, Barry, what?
I didn't pick a good word. I don't know what a good word. Variable. There we go. That's a much better word. Variable is very variable as to how much can be exerted in any given situation.
And Gordon?
I reject that idea that the lack of control over our next thought is evidence against free will. I reject that because I still, while I cannot automatically I can't control at a fine-grained level the arising of a specific thought, and you know, as an aside, shout out to Sam Harris and his meditation program. After 30 years of Buddhist meditation, I think what he teaches there is spot on, excellent.
Yeah.
But and it leads to that insight and that investigation, you know, watching the thought arise, right? Can I control the arising? But I can control my reaction. I can control the amount of attention I spend with that thought. I can control whether I give in to fear or courage in the instant of that arisal. I have a choice of being carried away by the thought or continuing to rest my attention in the space that encompasses the thought. That there's a matter of choice there that is easier. Discipline makes that choice easier, and the choice to apply discipline to set myself on the track to become more conscious of making that choice. So again, I'm rejecting that thought. There was something else I wanted to respond to, but I'll leave it there.
I want to add to this what you were saying, Eric, about it being variable and it depends on the situation. I heard this idea. I think it might have been from Jordan Peterson, although I'm not sure. But it's the idea that consciousness actually evolved to confront the unknown. So we're thinking habitually. We're sort of on autopilot until something unexpected happens, and then we wake up. And so I wonder if you could sort of argue that free will is most exercisable when you're facing the unknown. I mean, that certainly feels true to me, that if I suddenly I learned my house is catching on fire and I have to make a decision about going into the bedroom and grabbing this, or like that feels like a choice. Because what if it's completely unknown? What else do I have other than my conscious free will? And I think I'm kind of smuggling a connection in there between consciousness and free will, but it does seem like there's a connection there. And Adam, I saw your hand up. I don't know if you still want to.
I can't remember what I was going to say. Take it away.
I remember another thing I wanted to add on this, and connected to what you were saying, Logan, is that arising of thoughts that I experience in meditation. There's thoughts that are on that two-dimensional plane that was talked about before, and there's the space around the thoughts, incorporating other sensations, and which it's almost, maybe it is, do I choose to attend in a left brain fashion or a right brain fashion?
Yeah.
Exploration.
I am bursting to say something right now here. So I really think and my argument, I've had this argument in my own head with Sam Harris over and over again, and I just wish I could nail him down and talk to him directly about it. But here I am with you guys. All right, you'll have to do. The thing is that there is a language that is not cognitive, it's chemical. So even every thought you have has a chemical expression. I knew a guy who had some kind of, I'm sorry.
It's not reducible to chemistry though, because of emergence.
Well, let me go on here. So, so the right brain listens to chemical language. It knows chemical language. It comes from the organs secreting messages, but they're chemical messages. It's just a different language, and it's not cognitive. It's not abstract, and that's how. So the right brain thinks in chemicals. It accesses chemicals. It's like it knows what the skin is feeling through. I would say chemistry and neurons, biology. You know what I mean? It's not separated out like the abstract. So if you want to know what's going on in your life, you have to understand that part of your right brain, which is like that one book you said, The Emissary and the Whoever, that book, but he's saying, yeah, that's the one that's controlling everything. And then this other little left brain thing that thinks it's the ego, it's the seat of the ego. It's the center of the ego, that left brain. And it thinks it's running the show, but it's not. And I mean, I know we've had this conversation before, but if most of what is going on is unconscious and happening at a chemical level, then where's this free will? Well, that's where it is. That is where it is. So it would be like if you went for a walk and refreshed your metabolism, and that would change the direction that you go in just simply because you took a walk or went swimming or took a shower or got a massage or whatever. So I just feel like what's missing from a lot of these arguments is just a total lack of understanding of that chemical language that is a language, that is a system of knowing things and a system of deciding things. In other words, the amygdala decides things. It decides whether it's going to fight or flight, that's chemically communicated. I don't know.
So chemistry is But Adam, you had your hand up a long time ago.
I think Josh has got direct.
Yeah, just quickly. The right brain, so it's more holistic is my understanding. So yeah, there's more attention paid to signals from the body So it could include chemical signals, hormones, etc. But it also, I mean, there's a brain part too. So it's, but the idea is that it's more holistic, and any thoughts that we have about decisions we've already made from that side are produced in reaction to things coming out of the body. So, okay, in just a minute.
I need to go pee.
Yeah, we'll do it in just a minute. My nephews. So just, I think, yeah, if there's free will, it is coming from, like, if decisions are really being made by the right brain and the holistic, embodied understanding, then any thoughts that we have, just understanding that and learning to pay attention to those bodily signals and not get caught up by the thoughts necessarily seems to be a good approach.
So I kind of want
got to bring the kids on camera now.
Yeah, we want to see them.
They're gone.
Sorry, Adam. What do you say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, there's this biodirectionality between, like, yeah, you feel a certain way, but then you can think yourself into a better way of feeling. Like, but also, like, thoughts and decisions in the I quadrant up there, and then it quadrant, talking chemicals, same language for talking the same things. And the final thing I kind of want to say was about free will was, like, okay, so for the case of outliers, these people who are, like, let's say 20 years old, like wildly successful, like who have achieved some sort of non-linear success, was that destined and just ingrained into them, or were they actually able to make decisions, harness their attention, change their environment in such a way that they also managed to get certain insights and then build upon them again and again, using that free will to get to where they are? Or was it they were destined?
Yeah, I would say it was the trajectory of their flow state, and that flow state doesn't really. I think that the left brain can be used to course correct, but I would think that it speaks against free will, but the way that we bounce off of the environment and the world is going to it's going to put us in some kind of a trajectory.
Yeah, with a huge amount of luck involved. Go ahead, Logan. I'm sorry.
Completely luck. That's Sam Harris's point.
Yeah, I don't agree.
So I think maybe since we've had basically a super long plenary, maybe we could start the summarizing statements a bit early and just at the end of the call with them. Again, the idea is just keep it very short and get poetic if you want. Unity is blind or prevents emergence. Blind to or prevents emergence.
This is the right context to debate Sam Harris topics.
Is emergence always good? Can there be evil emergence, in other words?
Depends upon your survival agenda. Just a comment.
I've just got a weird mix of, like, unification, integration, free will, right and left brain, and disruption.
and nephews.
Random, yeah, random mutation. Right?
Unity is fragile. Integration is stable.
Or unity is inevitable, right? It's just an absolute fact, right? Undisruptible. There is no getting around it.
Aside from the ultimate unity, no other unity is truly possible.
Yeah, that's something like that. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
This is plagiarism, but unity is celebrated in the differentiation and integration within the unity.
Yeah.
I mean, unity is a regression, right? It's a degeneration. Unity is degenerate. Synergy is whatever, the opposite of whatever is generative, right? Synergy and emergence are generative. Unity, except for the grand unity, right? Any other unity is degenerate. Or at least temporary. Let's maybe not necessarily degenerate, but at best temporary, at worst degenerate. There we go.
Partial, I'd say.
I
think it's partial.
Partial.
Yeah. So synergistic integration producing emergence that hews toward higher and higher integration and unity, but any like vision of unification or unity in it that's not the whole thing is by definition partial, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, by definition partial, right?
Right.
I think if we think about awareness of unity, then inherent in that is a sense of differentiation, and just in order to be conscious of unity, there has to be a strong sense of separation. Just in terms of those opposites.
But that's the grand unity, isn't it? Right? Is that up and down and black and white and good and evil and chaos and order and blah 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 blah. The list is endless. These things only exist in opposition to each other, right? They all emerge as pairs of opposites from that unity, right? So there is, yeah. I mean, it seems fairly clear, right? The wellspring of eternal unity or something like that creates an endless list of pairs which then go out and dance with each other.
And if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution.
Yeah, I would say unity is non-resistance.
Which scares those of us who might think resistance is fun or necessary.
Oh boy. So go ahead, Magnus.
No, I was going to say resistance is futile.
I hate my ego, but I hate even worse the thought that I should relinquish my individuality.
There's an interesting phrase. I hate my ego. I, my ego, hate my ego. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, could you make the case? Actually, maybe I'm going to take this off topic. But we're conditioned within to behave in certain ways, and it's a personality that isn't necessarily your higher self. So actually, you're sacrificing the lower for the higher.
Yeah. No, this is starting a whole new thing.
Well, I'm curious at this point whether we can, because we've been on a journey on this call. Been on a real journey. Can we retrace the steps? And whether that would
How did the questions start on unity? Exactly, I don't remember.
Around GMT, I had the UTC versus GMT. Can we all get onto one
Universal.
one? Yeah,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
my paranoia about unity prompted me to say that it's going to happen when the Chinese take over.
Right.
Or at least, so that was my paranoid thought. So then I started speaking from that place of paranoia about unity, and unity is a bad thing, and the difference between unity and integration. And the serious distaste that I have, but you know what, the fundamental thing for me, sorry, Adam, but I respect your idea to trace the steps, but fundamentally it comes down to the fact that I have this part of myself that will always react to say, don't tell me what to do. Fuck off, don't tell me what to do. And therefore I resist unification. I resist a lot of healthy integration as well. But
Dostoevsky in Notes from Underground talks about how he basically says, like, even if you made a perfect universe, and for all men, man would revolt simply to not be a perfect cog, to not be a piano key, is how he says it. I am not a piano key. I am, they would break any perfection you could put in front of them, because the freedom, he's sort of arguing that to imagine you could build a utopia is to sort of forget that freedom is in some sense one of the highest virtues, and that would trump, oh, I'm in a perfect society, let me be this perfect cog. No, I'm actually not going to be doing that.
It depends on what you mean by the perfect society, doesn't it? I mean, if freedom is one of the highest, if not the highest ideal, then the perfect society would reflect man's ability to be free, right? Would accommodate, would actually be, oh my God, this is really interesting, would actually be oriented towards expanding its ability to accommodate outrageous behavior, right? That's essentially, but that's exactly what it would be doing, expanding its ability to tolerate ever more outrageous behavior from its citizenry and integrate that into the whole.
That is the most profound thing I've heard in a long time.
Yeah, it sums up the liberals.
Sums up the liberals? I'll be proud of that. I think.
Me too. That's fucking utopia, man. That is utopia.
It's anti-fragility, right? It's the ability the ability of an organism to increasingly respond to diversity of stimulus in its environment.
And the more as a global society, as an entity, the more that it allows internal differentiation, the more synergies you would find, the more emergence you would find. So
the more possibilities.
Yeah.
But it again implies already that it's not exactly perfect, because there is an expansion there is a transformation there.
But so perfect, if there was such a thing as perfect, then it is incapable of evolving, right? That's it. It's dead. It's stagnant. It's over, right? So perfection has to include the ability to improve, right? That has to be a part of perfection, is the ability to make it better, right? The continued ability to make it better.
Right. Or the
which is sort of a paradox, right? But sorry, Gordon.
Perfect as a process, not an end state.
Perfecting.
But even then, I still have this strong intuition that perfection is impossible. And Eric, what you were saying, I think, points at a contradiction, which is to say, to be perfect, you have to be able to evolve. But if you're able to evolve, you're not yet perfect.
Then you're not perfect. Exactly right. Exactly right.
Which I can maybe then connect that to the idea of we brought up this greater unity several times, but that could be something that's always going to be out of reach. So therefore always impractical to aim for in any way.
And is a balancing act, because there's always this balancing act between being an individual and being a part of the society. And yeah, we make sacrifices on both sides for there to be a balance, and that is unity.
I don't know.
Perfection is the ability to accommodate an infinite, the largest infinity of possibilities. Right? Perfection is the largest infinity of potentialities.
But like when Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who brought TM to the world, you know, he talked about something that I do experience, and that is called spontaneous right action. And so, you know, when you get into that flow state, you get supported by nature, you get supported by the cosmos, and that's kind of harkens back to what Adam says, like, how come one person just, you know, just went on to fame and fortune, it was able to be supported by all the laws of nature. And so the goal of TM is to be so integrated with the laws of nature that you're spontaneously supported. And I often I stop and consider that, like, if I wasn't pushing so hard right here, if I just released and practice non-resistance, what would happen here? Would the better thing arise? You know, so this idea that there could be spontaneous right action would indicate that there's something dynamic in that unity going on. It doesn't have any characteristic really, except that when you tune in to it, your life, you get into a flow state.
Okay, I think I'm gonna call it here. There's a party going on next door that I am eager to get to. Plus it's 5 minutes past.
It's better a party with more infinite potentiality than us.
I'm not sure about that. I wouldn't go that far, but they
All right.
You got that going for them.
Yeah.
My real life anyway. My real space. What is real? Oh my God. Okay.
Okay.
Right. This stuff is hard work. You have to take a break from it once in a while.
Right. That's right.
All right. Nice seeing everybody again.
Okay.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Yeah, likewise.
Session,
Take
guys.
care,
Bye.
y'all.